story of America is mainly a story of people who came here from other lands. It is a story. The story begins in the wilderness of America at the beginning of the 17th century. The English were among the first to establish colonies in that part of America which was to become the United States. They were ambitious, filled with hopes for prosperity and land ownership. Most of them became farmers and prospered, setting a pattern for colonial life. Other Englishmen came for political and religious freedom. Here in America, settlers knew their interpretation of the Bible would not be restricted. While most of the English came as willing immigrants, most Africans, who became an important source of labor, were forced into immigration. The first Africans had been brought to Virginia in 1619. Although ships brought many people of different nationalities and religious beliefs from Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries, it was the English who became dominant. By their political and cultural activities, they contributed most to the development of the American colonies. From English laws and government developed the Constitution of the United States. By the early 1800s, immigrants in America were prospering as they could not have done in Europe. Beyond the Appalachians, a vast frontier of enormous resources was open for settlement. It attracted many people who had left Europe because of overpopulation and problems created by the growing industrialization. Many immigrants wrote home of the opportunities in America. Some wrote of opportunities in agriculture. One immigrant farmer wrote, "Dear brothers and sisters, the land is rich indeed, and every industrious farmer may become a freeholder. There is no limit to his prosperity." Others wrote of opportunities in industry. One immigrant factory worker wrote, "Here there are hundreds of factories, both cotton and woolen, and some weavers wanted in the same shop with me. It is a very pleasant country as I ever saw." And across the Atlantic, other European peoples heard of such opportunities. In the late 1840s, immigration of Irish farmers was spurred by a potato famine. On the Irish farms, the tenants depended on potatoes as the main food supply, but a blight shriveled the potato plant throughout Ireland, causing famine and widespread death. The farmland, owned by Irish landlords, taxed by the British government, did not provide the people with the desired standard of living. Because of poverty and famine, many Irishmen left their land, attracted by the hopeful opportunities in America. Shipping companies encouraged Irish immigration by offering low rates for travel across the ocean. Most Irish immigrants settled at first in the major seaport cities, but work for them there was often uncertain. Eventually, many of these immigrants moved to the growing industrial cities and were able to earn steady wages in the factories. The Irish contributed much to the beginnings of the industrial growth of the United States. Guidebooks encouraged immigration of Germans in the 1850s, when economic conditions were unfavorable in much of Europe. The books told of the many job opportunities in the industries of the growing American cities of the East and the Midwest. The German workers who settled in these cities put to use the crafts and trades they knew. Some German immigrants settled on farms, mostly in the Midwest. Here they introduced methods of cultivation that increased crop yields necessary for the growing population of America. Here, inexpensive land, low taxes, and democratic government helped them to prosper. The Germans also brought with them ideas for better dairy farming and ways of increasing milk production and of making other dairy products. This was the beginning of the dairy industry in America. Yet many Germans were slow to adjust to American ways and clung to the heritage of their native country. Newspapers published in German told of other German immigrants, intellectuals, and craft workers. Germans would eventually influence the politics and culture of American life. From across the Pacific during these years, Chinese immigrants came. By the 1860s, many were at work in California, where most of them settled. There they found jobs with the growing railroads as well as in the gold mines. Other laborers thought of them as unfair competition, for they were willing to accept the most menial tasks for less wages than American or European workers received. Further Chinese immigration was restricted in 1882 when the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed. But contributing to the constant growth of American industry toward the close of the 19th century was the labor supply made available by continuing European immigration. More Englishmen and Germans came to work in the bustling mills and factories. Working with Americans, they assimilated American ways and became permanent settlers of the growing cities. During these years, immigrant guidebooks helped influence Scandinavian immigration by suggesting where to settle. Norwegians, as well as Swedes and Danes, came to eastern cities, and many moved on westward to the undeveloped treeless prairies, where their first dwellings were often houses of sod. They had left small farms in Europe for the large tracts of land in America that offered them an opportunity to prosper and grow with a young nation. Because of their isolation on the prairies, there was little chance for these immigrants to cultivate the arts or the intellectual life, so they were slow to acquire American ways. By 1890, steamships began bringing people from southern, central, and southeastern Europe. Historic photographs show us these people who were seeking economic opportunity in America. At the immigrant station on Ellis Island, they were examined and questioned. What is your occupation? Any criminal record? Any communicable diseases? Any physical disabilities? Do you have any relatives in this country? Where will your family live? The immigrants settled mainly in the cities where they could find work. They usually lived in crowded neighborhoods, breeding areas for disease and crime. Yet, as a labor force, these immigrants contributed to the growth of American cities, commerce, and industry. In the 1920s, this act and several other acts that were passed by our government limited immigration to the United States. Quotas were established for different countries, allowing only a specified number of immigrants to enter each year. And so the stream of immigration was slowed. To America's shores had come the English in the 17th century, who established our patterns of government and language. Then, in a series of great waves of immigration, came the Irish, who provided a needed labor force for the industrial growth of our nation. Then Germans, who helped develop the Midwest as a major agricultural area. Asians, who aided the industrial growth of the far West. Scandinavians, who turned the treeless prairies into a national granary. Southern, Central, and Southeastern Europeans, who contributed to the growth of our great American cities. Yet, in more recent times, when political and religious refugees fled Europe, they were admitted to the United States under special immigration laws. And immigrants will continue to come, filled with the enthusiasm and faith that have contributed so much to the strength of our people and our nation. For the story of our nation is, in a sense, a story of immigration, a story of people who came to America from other lands.